I've combed through every major plot hole in Rick and Morty history, and trust me, some of these are straight up dimension-shattering. Whether it's Rick needing Morty's brainwaves just to stay alive, or the fact that infinite timelines somehow still contradict each other, the logic in this universe is hanging on by a thread. And yeah, we're starting off strong, with a plot hole that completely wrecks the reason Rick brings Morty on adventures in the first place. Buckle up, this gets messy. The Morty brainwave contradiction. Rick may be the smartest man in the universe, but even he can't science his way out of this plot hole.
You know what, Rick? I'll tell you something. I'm more than a human shield.
Yeah, that's right. You are. You're a perfect impenetrable suit of human armor, Morty, because you're as dumb as I am smart.
In Season 1's Close Rick counters of the Rick kind, Rick claims he needs Morty around to mask his genius brainwaves. According to him, Morty's regular brain acts like a camouflage device, making it harder for the Citadel of Ricks and other enemies to track him. It's the whole reason he supposedly drags Morty along on dangerous adventures. Sounds believable until you watch literally any other episode. Rick goes solo all the time and leaves Morty behind, whether he's partying with Gearhead, joining the Vindicators, or running from godlike entities. Somehow Rick manages to fly across realities without his supposed brainwave shield, and no one's knocking on his garage door. And then Mortyplicity in Season 5 tries to patch this by saying Rick made hundreds of decoy families to confuse his enemies, but that just opens another hole. If the decoys are enough to mask him, he shouldn't have been dragging Morty around in the first place. This undermines the foundation of Rick and Morty's dynamic. What started as a survival tactic became a recurring gag, and then suddenly became irrelevant. The show wants it both ways, that Morty is essential for Rick's protection and completely optional depending on the episode. It's one of the biggest plot holes of the show, because if Rick really needed Morty to survive, he'd never let him stay home. If he really did need him for protection, why did he go ahead and build an entire multiverse designed to protect his ego? The Central Finite Curve.
Do you know what the Central Finite Curve is? They built a wall around infinity. They separated all the infinite universes from all the infinite universes where he's the smartest man in the universe.
Evil Morty drops one of the show's biggest lore bombs about the Central Finite Curve. It's a multiversal firewall that blocks out all universes where Rick isn't the smartest man alive. According to Evil Morty, this was designed by Ricks to trap themselves in realities where their intellect is unmatched, creating a closed loop of superiority. But here's where it all falls apart. The show heavily implies that Rick C-137 played a big role in building the curve, except there's a problem. In the Rick Shank Rickdemption, Rick admits he hadn't cracked portal travel until much later in life, long after the curve supposedly existed. If he didn't invent portal travel until after his wife's death, how could he have helped design a multiversal barrier that depends entirely on interdimensional access? And it gets worse. Evil Morty needs to scan Rick's mind to access curve data, which suggests C-137 holds the master key. But that conflicts with earlier episodes that show the curve functioning independently. Built and maintained by the Citadel, a council of Ricks that would have needed that tech long before Evil Morty came along. No one knows if Rick C-137 built it, or all Ricks, and the writers don't seem interested in explaining it either. This is supposed to be the central pillar of the show's multiverse rules, and it contradicts everything we know about Rick's personal timeline. Either Rick was a founding architect of the curve, or he was just a latecomer with a grudge. But if the show can't even get its multiverse story right, wait until you see what they do to Rick's personal timeline. Rick's age and Morty's baby memories.
This is a nightmare. I can't believe you used to lock me up in this glorified chicken coop.
Chicken coop? Those are procedurally generated clouds, Beth. That river is a rainbow, literally. Come on, I put real elbow grease into this place.
No, you're supposed to put elbow grease into your daughter.
Gross.
From the beginning, Rick and Morty tells us Rick abandoned Beth and the family for 20 years. That's the emotional anchor behind Beth's hate for her dad, Jerry's trust issues, and Rick's constant attempts at redemption. Morty is 14, so the math is simple. Rick wasn't around when Morty was born. He shouldn't even know what baby Morty looked like. But then Season 3 happens. In the ABCs of Beth, we get a flashback of Rick holding a toddler Morty. And in Rest and Ricklaxation, Rick emotionally reflects on Morty's childhood like he actually raised the kid. These are framed as serious moments meant to add emotional weight to Rick's character. Did the writers forget the 20-year absence, or are we supposed to believe Rick was popping in and out of Morty's life between benders and dimension hopping because it doesn't add up? Either Rick left for decades and only returned recently, or he was low-key around the whole time and just never mentioned it. But the show never commits to one version. It wants Rick to be the absent, deadbeat dad and the secretly caring grandfather who remembers holding Morty as a baby. This inconsistency breaks the emotional core of the show. If Rick was there when Morty was a baby, then Beth's trauma, Morty's lack of trust, and Rick's own guilt are all built on a lie. If Rick can't even keep track of whether he raised Morty or not, hit subscribe because the timeline fails are just getting started. Since Jerry's plot hardly qualifies as a storyline, Rick's timeline makes absolutely no sense.
Who do you think had more taken from them when you shot 20 cc's of liquid dream killer into my daughter? She was Rick's daughter, Jerry. She had options. Morts. Oof. That all ended because she felt sorry for you. You act like prey, but you're a predator. You use pity to lure in your victims. It's how you survive.
Jerry's permanent unemployment. Jerry's career path is basically a black hole. Since episode 1, Jerry Smith has been the poster child for failure. He's insecure, aimless, and, most of all, unemployed. It's a running gag that everyone, including his own kids, mocks him for. The problem is that in spite of being ridiculed for being unemployed, Jerry never makes an effort to find employment. Seriously, think about it. Across multiple seasons, timelines, and even realities, Jerry does nothing to change his situation. He just vibes, and somehow he's still able to afford a house, car, cable, and 2 kids.
Jerry, what the hell is happening?
The galactic government collapsed.
Are you okay?
Look, I'm not proud to share this, but the truth is I just kept crawling and it kept working.
When he does get hired by the Galactic Federation in the Rick Shank Rickdemption, it's by accident. And once they leave Earth, he's back to being jobless Jerry with no questions asked. And the weirdest part is that no one ever forces him to fix it. Beth complains, Summer complains, Jerry complains, but nothing changes. The guy lives in a universe where robots grant wishes and magic mushrooms turn you into a CEO. And he still manages to do absolutely nothing. This isn't just a character quirk, it's a structural flaw in the writing. The show wants Jerry to stay pathetic forever, but it never explains how that's even possible. So while Rick defies the laws of space and time, Jerry defies the laws of basic economics. His lack of income makes no sense, but wait till you see what happens when Morty has a baby with a robot.
All right, uh-oh.
Uh-oh? What is that?
I think Morty's robot was designed for more than long weekends.
The human-alien DNA hybrid problem. Rick might be able to rewrite physics, but even he can't explain how Morty got a robot pregnant. In Raising Gazorpazorp, Morty has a moment. With an alien sex robot, and somehow 9 months compressed into 9 seconds later, out pops Morty Jr., a half-human, half-Gazorpian hybrid. The show shrugs it off as one of Morty's typical screw-ups, but there's a much bigger issue here. This should be biologically impossible. We're talking cross-species reproduction between a human teenager and an alien machine that doesn't even have organic parts. At best, it's a synthetic incubator. At worst, it's a glorified vending machine. Either way, there's no plausible explanation for how a viable organism with both human and alien DNA comes out of that. Real-world biology tells us humans can't even reproduce with chimpanzees, and we share 98% of our DNA with them. But Morty somehow beats evolution, and the show doesn't treat this as a one-time joke either.
This is for you, Daddy.
Oh, man. Okay, listen to me, Morty Jr. I gotta tell you something very important, okay? Killing is bad. Bad.
You're silly, Daddy.
Later episodes treat Morty Jr. like a real character with genuine development and trauma, all based on the premise that interspecies, intermechanical reproduction is completely normal in the Rick and Morty universe. The show bends science all the time, sure, but this is snapping it in half and feeding it to a Gazorpian. If biology doesn't matter in this universe, apparently neither does time, because the next contradiction is so big it should have solved every episode before it started. Time manipulation. Out of all the tools Rick has ever used, the one he completely forgets exists might be the most powerful. Time manipulation.
Shut up, Morty. The last time you felt something, we all almost died. You little piece of shit.
Back in A Rickle in Time, Rick freezes time for months, fixing the house, throwing raves, even playing with time like it's a video game. He literally repairs their entire world without anyone noticing. That one scene proves he has the ability to pause, rewind, and control time with pinpoint accuracy. And then, he never uses it again. Seriously, the Galactic Federation invades Earth and he didn't freeze time once. Evil Morty took over the Citadel and he had no backup plan then either. Summer got trapped in a collapsing space-time loop. Still nothing. It's like Rick forgets he can bend time whenever the stakes are too high or worse. The writers hope we forgot. The show tries to explain this away by saying time is unstable or too dangerous, but that doesn't hold up. If Rick was smart enough to fix time after fracturing it across multiple realities, he's smart enough to use it safely. And even if it's risky, Rick's entire character is based on doing reckless science-y stuff just because he can. It's a missed opportunity and a full-blown contradiction. The show introduces god-tier tech, proves it works, and then ignores it forever. Time manipulation could have solved a dozen major conflicts, from intergalactic wars to simple misunderstandings. Instead, Rick lets entire planets burn while holding a time freeze button in his back pocket. If Rick can freeze time for months and still forget to use it, just wait until he starts treating the portal gun like a toy. One button press could fix everything. However, Rick's too busy losing track of how his own portal tech works. Portal gun technology time travel is Rick's most ignored power. The portal gun is his most abused. From the very first episode, the portal gun defines Rick and Morty. It's the reason interdimensional travel is possible, the reason the Citadel exists, and the backbone of nearly every major story arc. But the problem is, the rules for how it works change every other episode. In pilot, Rick specifically says the gun needs portal fluid when it's out of juice. In later episodes, it suddenly needs to recharge. Sometimes it breaks from overuse, and sometimes he just builds a new one mid-conversation. In the Ricklantis mix-up, Rick treats it like a fragile device, and by season 6, he's tossing it across rooms like a TV remote. Even worse, the season 5 finale breaks every portal gun in existence to set up a new status quo. But by season 6, they're suddenly back with no clear explanation. It's treated like a minor detail that the most powerful tech in the universe suddenly works again out of nowhere. This inconsistency makes things simpler. If the portal gun can do anything and break anytime the writers want drama, then it becomes a plot device instead of a tool. There are no limits. It's just a matter of convenience. And for a show that prides itself on smart science fiction, that's the laziest solution of all. Still, the portal gun breaking physics is nothing compared to a daycare that casually connects every universe.
Jerry, Borie, you created a daycare for my dad?
Are you kidding? I wish I had this idea.
The Jerry Borie cross-temporal paradox. If the portal gun bends logic, Jerry Borie shatters it into dust. In Morty Night Run, Rick casually drops Jerry off at an interdimensional daycare, a place specifically built to babysit every Jerry from every universe. Located on a cross-temporal asteroid, this place exists outside of normal space-time and functions as a hub for infinite realities. Let that sink in. This is a building that connects all timelines, all dimensions, and all versions of one very average guy. So, why isn't everyone fighting over it? This should be the most valuable location in the multiverse. The Galactic Federation, Evil Morty, even the Council of Ricks, any of them would kill for access to a place that can link them to every known reality. It's the ultimate surveillance tool, smuggling route, or political weapon. Instead, the only people who use it are Rick's trying to ditch Jerry for a weekend. But how is this place even managed? Who funds it? Who maintains security? Why hasn't anyone exploited it to kidnap Mortys or destabilize the multiverse? One portal misfire, and someone could unleash infinite Jerrys onto the central finite curve. The existential threat level here is off the charts, and yet the show treats it like an interdimensional Chuck E. Cheese. The existence of Jerry Borie opens more questions than it answers, and the fact that it's never brought up again makes it worse. It's a one-time gag with universe-breaking implications that the writers immediately bury. If infinite Jerrys make no sense, wait until you try counting how many Mortys live rent-free at the Citadel.
So I didn't know there were still Ricks and Mortys living on the Citadel. I wonder what their day-to-day lives are like.
Citadel population logic. If Jerry Borie broke reality, the Citadel broke basic math. The Citadel of Ricks is supposed to be a centralized hub, a floating dystopia where thousands of Ricks and Mortys from across the multiverse live, work, and rule. It's introduced as a necessary evil, a place where Rick variants can coexist while keeping Mortys in check. But once you start thinking about how it actually works, it starts to get confusing. First off, let's talk Mortis. According to the Rick Shank Rickdemption, Mortis only exist because Ricks abandoned Beths across infinite timelines. So how do so many Mortys end up at the Citadel? Some are students, some are cops, some are running businesses. Mortis are supposed to be 14, but here they're running elections and owning real estate. So what happened to their families? Did these Ricks all abandon Beth just to get a Morty to raise at the Citadel? Are they kidnapping Mortys? Are they aging them up somehow? The show never explains. It just throws Morty after Morty at the screen and hopes you won't ask where they came from or where their families went. And the same problem goes for the Ricks. If the Citadel houses all these Ricks, who's inventing things? Who's traveling the multiverse? Why do some Ricks have Mortys and others don't? There are cops, janitors, factory workers, all Ricks, all somehow cool with being part of a Rick-run bureaucracy, which completely contradicts the core trait of Rick as a nihilistic anarchist who doesn't trust anyone, especially himself. The Citadel was built to expand the lore, but it ends up contradicting everything the show says about Rick and Morty's origins. It's a city made of paradoxes. Morty's running for office and Rick's cleaning bathrooms. If that's not peak multiverse nonsense, drop a comment. Which Citadel moment broke your brain first? Rick and Morty have come up with their own version of science, so why not throw in some actual magic while we're at it?
Grandpa Rick, I like working here.
You work for the devil.
So what?
So what?
The devil and magic contradiction. Rick has one rule: science is real, and everything else is nonsense. He mocks religion, trashes spirituality, and constantly reminds everyone that the universe is chaos, not destiny. He's the guy who dissects gods, builds time-freezing tech in a garage, and laughs at the idea of anything he can't measure. So, why does he go toe-to-toe with the actual devil? In Something Ricked This Way Comes, Rick enters a petty war with Mr. Needful, a literal supernatural being who runs a cursed antique shop. The episode never even questions whether this is real magic. In fact, Rick acknowledges the the curses exist, then opens his own counter-curse store just to spite the guy. He doesn't dismantle the magic, he plays by its rules and just wins harder. It's not like the show plays this as metaphor or illusion. It straight up confirms that these items are magically cursed and that the devil is, in fact, the devil. Which is a huge problem, because later episodes go back to insisting that magic doesn't exist and everything is just science in disguise. You can't have Rick be a militant materialist and someone who casually beefs with Hellspawn. This one-off joke completely breaks Rick's character. Rick's entire persona as a hyper-rational nihilist who only believes in science crumbles if he thinks magic is real enough to oppose it. Curses are real, Satan runs a storefront, and somehow Infinity still manages to break the plot harder. The Infinite Dimensions Paradox. This next one is a philosophical time bomb. From the start, Rick and Morty is built on one big concept of infinite dimensions. There are infinite Ricks, infinite Mortys, and infinite timelines in which every possible outcome occurs. Every decision you make creates a new reality, and every version of you exists somewhere. Rick says it, Morty lives it, and the portal gun thrives on it. Sounds cool, until you understand what that truly means. If everything happens somewhere, then nothing matters. Every choice, whether to kill a family or save a planet, has already been made at some point in time. There's a version of Rick that's a good father, a version where Jerry's president, and a version in close Rick counters of the Rick kind where they're all chairs. Free will doesn't exist, only probability. This Rick, that Morty. Why even pretend their choices matter when infinite versions are already covering all the outcomes? The show leans hard into character growth and drama, then turns around and says none of it matters because there's always another Rick, another Morty, and another timeline. It kind of kills the tension. It's narrative whiplash because 2 episodes later, they ditch their dimension like an old pair of shoes. But if nothing matters because everything happens somewhere, someone should have still noticed the bodies in the backyard. The Croninberg Grave plot hole.
All right, Morty, here we are.
Oh my god, Rick! Is that us? We're dead! What is going on, Rick? I'm freaking out!
Of all the things the Smith family conveniently forgets, this one might be the most insane. In Rick Potion number 9, Rick and Morty accidentally turn their entire planet into deformed Croninberg monsters. The solution was to skip to a nearby dimension where that version of Rick and Morty just died and replace them like nothing happened. Morty wanted Jessica to like him, and Rick turned it into a science experiment. One failed love serum turned into a cascading genetic meltdown. The human race mutated into twitching, liquefying Croninberg monsters, and Earth was unsalvageable. Rick's solution wasn't to fix it, it was to ditch it. He opened a portal to another dimension where everything was still normal, except in that one, Rick and Morty had just died. Morty watched his alternate self's body twitch on the ground, then helped bury it in the backyard with no explanation to Beth or plan to come clean. He just dragged 2 corpses outside and shoveled dirt until the problem disappeared. That was the moment everything changed, except it didn't. Summer kept hanging out by the fence. Jerry kept mowing the lawn. Beth poured wine on the patio next to 2 unmarked mounds of dirt. And nobody said a word. The show never followed up. Morty never explained, and no one ever noticed that the Morty they raised wasn't the one they started with. It was supposed to be the most traumatic thing Morty ever did. Instead, the show skipped past it like nothing happened. And by doing that, it skipped past the family too. Because if Beth doesn't see it, if Summer doesn't ask, if Jerry doesn't feel anything, then they're not characters anymore. They're props standing on a set where consequences don't matter. Rick leaves his problems behind and Morty buries his. And the rest of the family just sets the table like they didn't move into a house with 2 bodies buried in the yard. If you made it through all the paradoxes without falling into an existential spiral, hit subscribe. And we'll see you in the next video breaking down how smart every Rick and Morty character is.